Today, we've got something really special, a skein of 50/50 Qiviut and merino yarn. It's hand-painted, only 195 yards, and it came all the way from Alaska. And Alexa, one of our viewers, wrote in asking, what should I make with this? Hello, 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 and welcome to the Wool Needles Hands Midweek Ramble. My name is Taylor, and I will be your host. In this series, titled What Should I Make With This? Or What Should I Knit With This? I take submissions from viewers like you who provide me photos of yarn from their stash that they just don't know what to do with. I dig into Ravelry and other places as well and brainstorm some ideas that could work with the person's yardage, the weight of the yarn, and if they feel so inclined, they can provide me with measurements, and I can use that to determine some additional pattern suggestions as well. Nothing's ever off limits if it seems to strike inspiration, but for today's skein, it seems to be a little bit more precious. We're thinking carefully about yardage and projects that will let the colors in the yarn shine. Full disclosure, I don't have these skeins at hand. They are not sent to me. I only get photos and any information that the viewer is willing to provide. So everything I'm sharing with you today is based off of that information provided by the viewer. And so I'm going to pop up a picture of the skein in question here so you can see what it looks like. And this is the only photo that I received of this yarn, and so we're going off of what I see here. This is 195 yards of a Qiviut merino blend, 50/50. Now, if you've never worked with Qiviut, that's myself included. However, I have had the good fortune to feel Qiviut in the past. It is the undercoat of the musk ox, and it's one of the warmest and softest fibers you'll ever find. I can definitely attest to the softness. I've only been able to fondle some Qiviut for a very short period of time at a yarn shop in Taos, New Mexico. I didn't linger very long. I would have loved to have gotten completely handsy with it, but I can tell you it is incredibly soft. However, it has much less elasticity than wool, slightly more than alpaca, but not much. And so we really need to be considerate of that when we're choosing a pattern, because whatever it is that is created is not going to have that resilience and elasticity that something knit with pure wool would have. So I've chosen 5 patterns, and I've organized them based on how risky they are. We have patterns that are safe, patterns that are moderate, and a pattern that is more risky because of the yarn and the nature of the yarn and the yardage requirements. The first pattern is the Knock Shawl by Masho Lee. This only uses about 109 yards of yarn, so you have plenty of wiggle room with 195 yards in the skein that Alexa has here. This design is garter stitch with a little ruffle, so that multicolored yarn is going to show through beautifully, and you won't be distracted away by other textural details that might be present in the fabric. Very low risk, very wearable. Something I really want to point out here is that number 1, this is a free Ravelry download, and number 2, even though it shows languages as being German only, if you go to download the pattern, there is an English option for download as well. In fact, if I try it right now, just to be sure, yeah, there is an English version and a German version for the same design, and they're free. Okay, the next pattern I've chosen for the safe bets are a really lovely pair of fingerless mitts or hand warmers. These are called Sobak by One You Knit, and they are absolutely luscious and luxurious and completely wearable. It's one of those staple accessory pieces for your wardrobe that you'll come back to time and time again. I absolutely love them. There are 2 lengths for these hand warmers. The short length uses only 105 yards and the long is 175 yards. Either one is a go for how much yarn that Alexa has here at 195 yards. They're knit in simple stockinette, and the part that goes around the arm has a lovely double knit section to add a little bit of stability there. It's a great way to let the yarn shine, especially a yarn like this that is so precious and so soft. Now, there isn't a lot of resistance in the yarn, like I mentioned before, so the longer mitts that you have running up the arm, you might run into issues where they start to creep down the arm because they're not holding on too snug to the arm. However, I don't know if it's going to be that much of an issue, especially if you happen to be wearing these over a longer sleeve. If you're wearing them alone, I feel like that tendency might be higher. However, there is 50% merino in there, so there is going to be some elasticity. It's not like you're knitting with 100% Qiviut, so you are going to have a little bit of that resiliency. And the name Sobak, I looked this up, it's Korean, and it kind of means to do something slowly, little by little. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's a great name for something like these hand warmers. Okay, these next designs, I have two. They're more moderately risky. You have to be a little bit more careful with these and make sure that you check your gauge and you like the fabric density and the fabric drape. The first is the base doodle beanie. Now, I put this in moderately risky because it is a hat, and hats really need to have, well, they just kind of rely on the elasticity and the resilience of the yarn that you're using. Again, Qiviut doesn't have much of that. However, it's only 50% Qiviut, the other 50% is merino, which happens to have a lot of that resiliency. So that balance is there, and it could really work for this next pattern. It's essentially a plain stockinette beanie with a ribbed brim. Cozy, wearable, and a great place to showcase that unique fiber blend right against your skin. The yardage runs anywhere from 175 to 300 yards, depending on the size. So with 195 yards, you can definitely get a standard adult size. Just avoid going slouchy. The next is the Trigo scarf by Asar Knits. I really love that name. From what I believe it means orange tree or orange blossom, and trigo means wheat in Spanish. That's interesting. I love the names. I love the visual I'm getting here. Very, very botanical. This design I absolutely love. It's tapping into the really dainty scarf trend that's going on right now, almost like the bow tie scarf vibe, like petite knits, Sophie scarf, I believe. It's kind of tapping into that, and I really love that. But this one plays a lot with texture. And I think because it's an all over consistent texture, it's okay if it gets muted a little bit by the really awesome colors that are showing up in Alexa's skein. This one uses knits and pearls to create a lovely wheat stock texture, and it fits within this skein of 195 yards if you're sticking to the small or medium sizes. I want to read what it says here. It tells you that trigo is Spanish for wheat, but it also says it's a perfect spring and early fall scarf, and you can make it with only one skein of yarn. We start at one end, increasing to the desired width. The center part of the scarf is knit straight, and we finish with decreases to the end, to end with the same number of stitches that we started with. The pattern is written in US standard terms and includes instructions for 3 different sizes. And you can definitely create the small, medium sizes with the amount that we have here in Alexa's skein. Okay, the next one is another scarflet. And I'm intentionally sticking with this because we're very limited on yardage, number one. And number two, because of the fine nature of this yarn being 50% Qiviut, you want what you create to be something that has a special feel to it. And I feel like scarflets, shawls really are special. They can have that extra soft, lovely drapey yarn being used there. You don't have to worry so much about resilience. And it's something you can fold up and put away in your drawer, knowing that it's very special. You'll pull it out to wear with, I don't know, it doesn't even have to be a special outfit. You just know when you pull it out, it's a small item that uses up the yarn that you have, but it means something, and it just kind of showcases the colors beautifully. So without further ado, the last pattern that I have here is the Riptide Scarflet by Elizabeth Felgate. This one comes in 2 sizes, the small at 115 yards and the large at 231 yards. If you pick the small, you're well within range. However, if you have your heart set on the large, you are going to overshoot the yardage. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind with yarns like this. And when I say yarns like this, I'm referring to multicolored skeins of yarn. You really want to make sure that you keep in mind what will happen to the texture of the fabric when you knit that texture with multiple colors. If you're knitting something that's a very intricate lace pattern or cables, if you use a multicolored yarn, heavily multicolored like the one that you see here that belongs to Alexa, you'll notice that the lace work or the cable details become much more muted and toned down and less evident than they would be if you were knitting them with an all-over solid color. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't knit lace work or cables with multicolored yarn. You should absolutely do whatever brings you joy, but you should definitely do it expecting, just understanding and managing your expectations. So know going into it that if you are spending so much time creating this really lovely intricate lace pattern, you're not going to see that lace pattern very well with a heavily multicolored yarn. So that's why the patterns I'm sharing here today lean heavily on stockinette or garter stitch, because the simple texture really lets the yarn shine. Both the texture of the yarn being 50-50 Qiviut merino, but also the beautiful hand-painted color. So now I'll ask you, if you had 195 yards of 50/50 Qiviut and merino, what would you knit with it? If you have any suggestions, leave them down in the comments. What I provide here is only a small part of what we could offer Alexa so that she knows what she can do with this really lovely special skein of yarn from Alaska. And to everybody watching, if you have a skein or 2 or 3 or 4 in your stash and you just can't figure out what to make with it, send an email my way. The email is down below. Let me know whatever you can about the yarn. You can provide me with sizes and measurements so that I know how to narrow down sizing and make sure that whatever I do offer as a suggestion will offer sizes that will accommodate you. But let me know, because I love digging into Ravelry to try to find some patterns that work with those really unique, unusual, or just extra skeins lurking around your stash. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. If you took value from today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, definitely subscribe, and head over to the Patreon for Wool Needles Hands. There's a lot of additional content over there, and it's a fantastic way to support the work that goes into producing free content here on YouTube. I will see you guys for Sunday's update episode. Until then, happy knitting, happy making, happy whatever it is that you're doing. Take care, be well, and I will see you soon. Bye.